Welcome back to another Club PF Masterclass. Excited for this one today. If you don't know Steph, and I will let her introduce herself in a second, she heads up events at ZoomInfo. She's fantastic. They do a lot of events. She's very, very busy. Her and I got to hang out last week at B2B. Not only did we get to do an event together, but we also spoke on this subject. So she's already went through it once, and people loved it. We had a filled room. So I'm sure everyone that is listening live, everyone that is listening on demand, we'll make sure to tell you where you can find Steph after. But Steph, I'll let you introduce yourself. And right before I get to that, sorry, one other thing. If you have questions for Steph as we go through this, drop them in the chat. If you're listening on demand, make sure to just send Steph a message on LinkedIn. We'll get to that piece at the end of it and just kind of tell people where to find her. And yeah, so Steph, why don't you introduce yourself?
Cool. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. Hello, Club PF team members. I currently work at ZoomInfo. I'm the head of events there. I'm also a TAC crew member, so I work very closely with Nick and Mark on a daily basis. So it's super exciting to be able to collaborate. My background has changed quite a bit over the years. Well, not changed, but toggled between operations type of roles, think chief of staff to C-level executives, and events. And I always end up back at events. So I think at this point, like this is where I belong. I get so excited about them. To Nick's point about B2B MX, it was a really good show. It was super fun. I don't know about you, Nick, but like after an event, I get this like, it's almost like a post-event depression because you're like leading up, you're leading up, you're leading up. You see it happen live. And then it's like over and it's almost like you end a relationship with the event. So it's like a funny transition after. But one of the things that's been so important for me in my career in both roles, realistically, but extra important in events, is creating allies within the executive team and using that to navigate how you approach your event and experiential marketing and how you win budget approval in doing so. So with that, I'll dive right in unless you have anything else, Nick.
No, yeah, dive right in. And I'm sure there's questions that I'll even have. So I'll probably stop you at random points. And again, for anyone listening, feel free to drop it in the chat and it's very informal. So we're
Yeah,
just having a chat.
love it. And speaking of informal, I'm in my office today in the ZoomInfo office coming to you live, which means I'm in a swivel chair. So hopefully I don't give you whiplash as I'm talking, because that's probably the worst scenario for me doing a presentation. All right. So if you are watching live, it's helpful to know who you are, what your role is. If you are watching this on demand, would love for you to reach out after and let me know if you found it helpful, whether you are in sales or marketing. I think a lot of this, I actually had a few salespeople reach out to me after we did this talk at B2B MX and say, hey, I'm on this sales side, but it was really helpful to hear you coming from the marketing side on what this means for you all and how it can be perceived and how we can better collaborate from a sales side. So hopefully there's a bit of a mix connecting with us on this topic. Because either way, I think you can utilize some of the tactics that we discuss. When it comes to events in particular, I'm sure you have heard some comments from your leadership team or sales in general, or other parts of the org in general, maybe your CRO or CFO, that marketing events come with significant costs. There's no accurate way to measure them, and they often lead to disappointment. I obviously can't see you, but I'm sure if I had to guess and you're watching this, you're nodding your head. It is very tough unless you go into an organization that is very bought in on the idea of event-led growth. This is probably some of the conversations you're having with your executive leadership team. And it's not because events don't work. It's because a lot of times it's not pitched in the right way and or it hasn't worked in the past. They don't have the right, whether it's the right team in place, whether it's, the right investments in place. All of those things can really make a big difference. So if you feel this and understand this, you are not alone. All right. So what does success look like? In its simplest form, there are three main things that we'll dive into today. Regarding event marketing, and again, I do want to preface that a lot of these tactics can be used in other parts of the marketing org as well. So of course, starting with that strong foundation of executive and sales alignment. Doing more with less. This is important all the time, but even more so right now in our current economic climate. Everyone is looking for a way to continue to do what they're doing and drive the same lead gen and awareness of their product, but for half the cost and maybe even less, right? And then finally proving ROI. So as you're putting these investments in, being able to go back to those sales leaderships and executive leaders and saying, hey, we aligned on this. I was able to save you money here, and this was the ROI. So that can kind of help you tell the story. And those are the three things we're going to talk about today. So how do you gain executive alignment? This is definitely a tough one. I like to share a story when I talk about this, and it is that when I started at ZoomInfo, I came in as the chief of staff to the CMO. After a few CMOs, we landed on the right one. And when I started working with him, part of my job and what I like to do from an operational perspective is look around and take inventory of what's going on within the marketing organization. And one of the areas I saw that was a massive area of opportunity was event marketing. And so because I had that background, the solution was to move me there. So I did, and I'm so glad I ended up there. I have a great team, and we've been able to make some serious progress. But at the time, there wasn't really an event strategy. Outside of collecting leads, there wasn't really a way to prove ROI. There hadn't really been an analysis done on the portfolio of events that we were doing. So there was a lot of groundwork that needed to happen while we continued to execute on those important events that we know we needed to continue to do. So part of that looked like creating internal champions. So I did have a leg up because I was former chief of staff. So I already had some executive presence and alignment there, but I did lean in on that and say, start to get them in the mindset of like, I know this is how we've done events, but if we do it this way, we can probably get X, Y, and Z out of it. And just started to find those people in the organization that had been there longer than me and had attended events in the past and understand what they liked about them, ask them what could have been better. I kind of knew some of that, but hearing it from the people who had like boots on the ground is so, so important. So when we talk about this, like as you're building those internal champions, part of the process that I went through over the last year and a half in building that trust and gaining alignment at ZoomInfo was making sure we're on the same page. And it sounds simple, but it can be hard. Sales and marketing are often looking at different data points for success metrics. So in its simplest form, you want to tie everything back to the business goals. Outside of sales and marketing, what are the company's goals? And then, of course, those trickle down to both the CMO, the CRO, go-to-market leaders, whoever. And those are the people you want to say, okay, these are your goals. Here's how our events and our activations can support you in reaching that goal. So not only that, but you want to make sure you understand what they care about. And make sure that they know that you care about what they care about, right? And you actually have to care. Again, I think you hear Nick and Mark talk a lot about people first, go to market. All these humans you're interacting with are people. And guess what? They have quotas on their head, and those increase every quarter. So as much as you're stressed about, getting their alignment, they're stressed about hitting their number, which kind of leads me to my next point, like meeting them halfway. And this is kind of what I talked about when I was trying to get feedback from people. So not only do you want to make them feel heard and get their feedback, but there's a big part of it where you really need to balance the requests that are coming in from sales and keep that line of communication open. Nick and I were joking at B2B MX that Every salesperson thinks they're a marketer. But like the reality is marketing people are also salespeople at the end of the day. Like there's always some overlap. I think it's if you're an events person watching this, my favorite is when someone comes up and they're like, "Oh, in my last job, I ran events." And you're like, "But did you?" Because it is a very tough skill to learn. But oftentimes some of the great ideas I have coming out for our strategy are from the sales team because they are the ones talking to the customers. They're the ones talking to the prospects. They have more legacy with the product than me, more understanding of the product. They know what the problems are of our target audience, which can help you not only drive and decide on content for any events or speaking sessions you have, but maybe identify a few new trade shows, for example, that you could and should be attending. And then creating those internal champions, that's just going to help spread joy, spread awareness. I'm happy to announce that after a little over a year of my team going out and basically being politicians for events within the ZoomInfo org, we have people knocking on our doors all the time saying, "Hey, are we going to this event? Can I go to this event? Do you need support here? Can I get an executive meeting for this person at Adobe Summit?" And it's escalated in such like a great, exciting way that we're at the point where we're like, "Oh my God, how do we shut Slack off?" Nick, did I miss anything? Do you have anything you want to add here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, I would love to understand like and maybe you want to get to it, like any examples of things that you've done recently. Like I feel like B2B MX could be a good example of like how you met sales halfway. And I mean, I know it's still early, but I don't know if you've had any success or early success indicators from that event specifically.
Yeah, so for that one, I think pre-event is a good example of meeting sales halfway. So pre-event's important, right? Like for something like B2B MX and especially even larger trade shows, if you have an idea of who's going to be there and get scrappy with it, right? This kind of ties into the next topic of doing more with less. Go on the event website, pull the list of sponsors, pull the speakers, cross-reference that with your target account list, reach out to those account managers. You can do this in a large scale capacity. As you identify the people you're going to have on site supporting the event, let them know who's going to be there and do things like we did with BMX, which was have people book pre-booked meetings. If they book that meeting, that counts. If an SDR books that meeting, it counts as a meeting towards their quota for the quarter. So there's different ways you can incentivize it. So that's like one small example of meeting them halfway. And then on site, and even I guess I did this before as well. I even started to reach out to some of the other speakers. So I was also speaking. It's a very easy conversation starter. "Hey, I saw you're also speaking at B2B MX. I know you're a customer of ZoomInfo. Would love to have you come by and meet with George, who's going to be there from our team. Do you have some time to connect?" And that got us one of our biggest customers that we can easily upsell. And that turned into a meeting with our CEO on site, and now a post-event follow-up that could lead to a much bigger opportunity for us than it currently is. So that's the true definition of like a team, working together, and me going that extra mile and my team going that extra mile to get sales foundation to kind of work with once they're on site. I'll try to think of some other tactical ways we've done that, but the other way is just if you have something like Chorus or Gong, if you know an event is coming up, just sift through a couple of sales or prospecting calls and start to listen on what people are talking about and what are their pain points. So because if you can pull like 1 to 3 pain points that are continually coming up on sales calls, that's such an easy way to say, "Hey, we're going to this event. We have a session going on, and we also have X, Y, and Z people at the booth. we hear this topic coming up a lot. Is this something you think we could address with the team on site? And oh, by the way, 5 of your accounts are going to be there. Help us set up a one-to-one meeting and we can make sure to get them in front of an executive. So it's basically like, as much as you can, hand it to them on a silver platter. And if you really want to go the extra mile, say, we saw those 5 accounts, we know that they're worth X, Y, and Z in ACV. If you can help us get these pre-booked meetings, then that can be an influence of, 1.2 million in potential ACV, and we could help accelerate this deal for you. So also putting a dollar on that activation is helpful because, again, they're thinking about their quota at the end of the day. Cool. All right, next, doing more with less. This slide makes me giggle because I first saw this, someone had posted it on LinkedIn a while ago, and I just feel like it'll be relevant until the end of time. And it's the fact that marketing budget is also often one of the first ones to get cut, or it's a small one, right? We're often like the smallest team as well. So not only from a budget perspective for actual spend, but also headcount and overhead costs. And then the plan is like a yacht, right? Like you have this great plan. You're going to go sail around the waters of the south of France, and that is the plan. But the expected ROI is actually like a first-class cruise ship. And so how do you get from point A to B without going absolutely insane in the meantime? All right, so here's where you get scrappy. My team jokes that Scrappy is my middle name. I love getting scrappy and also bouncing around in my chair, as I warned you about. Some of the ways that we get scrappy on the events team at ZoomInfo is by utilizing creative engagement tactics, guerrilla marketing, which consists of leveraging creators and influencers on site, and then targeted experiential events. So one way that I think you can think about all 3 of these things is how do you expand your footprint at an event? So whether you have a booth or not, there's a way to make your presence known, right? So we had a booth at B2B MX. We expanded that presence through a speaking session with an influencer, who then we now have content coming out of after the fact. I spoke at B2B MX with Nick. That's another way we expanded our footprint. We had a VIP dinner with our CEO and then the C-level executives from Technology Advice. We did a happy hour with Stencil and on 24. And then we did another dinner with TAC and OneScreen.ai. And guess what? Because we partnered on all those things, it drives the cost down significantly. I think our dinner on Monday night, which had a mix of C-suite and ICs and influencers and creators. It was it was honestly one of the coolest dinners I've ever held. I don't know if you feel the same, Nick. Also, there was just a lot of fire. The venue was cool. Literally things were on fire. And I think each of us probably walked away paying $2,500, $3,000. So if you get in with the right partners and are aligned there, that's how you can drive those creative engagement tactics up and do more with less and really maximize on whatever budget you have. If you aren't sponsoring a booth at an event, go online and look at the sponsors, see who is going to be there. Say, hey, can I do a quick takeover at your booth? Can I come by and can you help promote us with this thing? Do you want to partner on a dinner? Do you want to partner on a happy hour? Do you want to do some co-branded swag that you could give away at your booth just to get little pieces of touches around for you to have a little bit of a footprint? And then Nick, I know you talked a lot about this at B2BMX and I love this, the creators and influencers and leveraging them. That expands your footprint, not just at the event, but after the event, right? So everything that they can do for you then turns into content. And that's oftentimes evergreen content that you can go back to if you do it the right way. Nick, do you want to add anything there? Or do you have anything to follow up on?
No, I would just say like, I mean, there's ways to infuse like creators and influencers into your entire go-to-market and
Mhm.
events being a part of that. So many people think of it as just like, hey, like I'm just going to do a one-off like sponsored LinkedIn post, but you can do so much more when you think of it as a partnership. Like, for example, we could be doing a webinar together. We could take that webinar, we could create 5 clips from it, use it on social media. I'm posting those clips. You're starting to get, I mean, again, it depends what your outcomes of what you're looking to achieve are. But if you're saying, hey, I care about awareness, it's a fantastic way to drive awareness. Or maybe I'm going to be at an in-person event that ZoomInfo is doing, for example, and it's like, all right, hey, I'm promoting myself being there, which is going to drive more people, hopefully, to the event. There's just a lot of different ways to use it throughout the entire piece. But I think there's a lot of like there's a lack of education around
Yep.
B2B, and CMOs and VPs of marketing just don't understand how to infuse it into different areas of their go-to-market, which is a big piece of what I've been trying to teach people.
Yep. Absolutely. 100% agree. And then that, when I say targeted experiential events, to me, that means not an event in particular, but it's a little bit more encompassing. Like maybe it is an event in and of itself, but it also is a brand awareness play, a brand play. And it also can be something that generates content. So, an example that I've been giving that I'm working on is there are companies that offer pop up podcast booths. And so, what I want to do is like brand, a podcast booth, Zoom info all over it, and put one of those up in some of our major cities where our customers are and prospects are. So, identify those areas for us. It's, Austin, Boston, New York, Chicago, Bay Area. Where can we get a permit to put those up? So not only is it free, well, not free branding, but branding from the podcast booth itself. It's an experience because people are going to walk by and be like, whoa, what's going on? And then if you get people into the booth and you're recording content, you have content. So it's like you're hitting multiple different areas within your marketing strategy with one activation. So think about areas where and you can do that. Like I hope to do that also outside of major events like Forrester B2B Summit. Can I get one of those pop-up booths on the sidewalk out front of the trade show exhibition center? Probably. So just think about it like that way. And that then also helps you expand your footprint with events. So you've done all these things and you're like, okay, great. How do I prove ROI? This is one of my favorite clips from a TV show ever. And the meme itself cracks me up because I know as marketers, we probably feel exactly like this man a lot, which is, I promise it mattered. Here's why. Please listen to me. It'll continue to matter. I promise I can prove this. So the ways that we at ZoomInfo prove success for events, and this is ever evolving. This did not exist a year ago, not even maybe 7 to 8 months. So this is new. So we're still iterating on what this looks like. But of course, the attendance rate, source pipe, which is another way of saying the difference in pipeline before the event versus after. So pipeline in the room, influenced engaged ACV. So engaged to us is anyone that we actually had a conversation with. We had a pre-booked meeting with, they attended the event. This does not include anyone at a trade show that just comes up and we scan because they took swag. These are the true people that we really, really, really actually spoke to. And then sourced pipe per attendee helps you identify how efficient the event was, as well as ACV per attendee. Outside of all this, taking the total cost of the event and in looking at ROI, I like to pull 2 different numbers for ROI. One includes travel and expense, and one does not. And for that, like travel and expense, super tactical, but I like to just look at hotel and flights. Meals and stuff tend to be a lot less. So the hotel and flights will give you a good example of what that looks like. And if you're thinking, well, yeah, great, but I don't want to have to go ask all the people who attend these events for their costs. If you have a tool like Navan or one of the other like travel systems that your team uses, usually you can have that pulled, so it makes it a little bit less manual. All right, so this is the money slide. So after doing all those things, in 2023, this is just an example of how things looked for the events team at ZoomInfo. We did 42 events. That is myself plus a team of 3. I act as a player coach, so I'm both strategy and very tactical. So maybe 3.5 people actually executing on all these things. Our budget was around 1.7 million. That's just in spend for events. That is not headcount, overhead costs, any of those things. I say that because it's helpful to be transparent about what we got out of all these things. But guess what? If we didn't know how to do more with less, that number would have been a lot higher, and I wouldn't have gotten approval to do a lot of the things we ended up being able to do. We managed to hit 662 million in engaged influence pipeline. And then we had 10 million close event engaged ACV. So those are those people I was talking about that we would 100% engage with. They were a hot lead. And that pipeline from those events that we influenced, or that pipeline that we influenced from the events, sorry, I should say, closed at that 10 million mark. And coming back to the big goals that are business wide, one of ours, especially in the go-to-market team, is going up market, really hitting those enterprise accounts, and then obviously mid-market. 89% of every event that we attended or hosted, 89% of the attendees were in that upmarket space. So in looking at this, I'm super proud looking back. And I think the things that we talked about leading up to this are part of the reason that we got where we are. But also, of course, we did have a lot of tenacity, a lot of scrappiness, and a lot of just desire to continue to get better. Nick, anything to add there?
No, I think it was fantastic. I mean, I think you were so like upfront about all of this because I think there's a lot that goes in. I mean, I think it's just important like to know like like a smaller company might not see these numbers. But that's okay. Like just think of it as like as long as things are trending up and like if you can use this as a benchmark for a larger company and then just kind of scale it maybe 3/4 of the way down for a smaller company,
Yeah.
you know where you hopefully should be to be able to get there. And if not, Steph can help you figure that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, absolutely. And also like your company might be like, I don't care about influence pipeline. And they might be asking like, well, I want like direct attribution. So there are some other workarounds on how you want to talk about that I'd be happy to work with some of you on. All right. So in closing, what can you walk away with? As marketers, we're being asked to do a lot more with less, but that doesn't mean that you can't get creative with it. In fact, it means you should be getting creative with it. This is where you think about, even though I work at ZoomInfo, I get an event on my lap and I'm like, all right, this is our budget. If we had unlimited budget, let's cut that by X, Y, and Z amount percent. And what can we do to get super creative? How about a $250 sign spinner? It seems so old school. And, I did one last year at Forrester B2B Summit, and everyone kept coming up to us and being like, yo, I saw your crazy sign spinner out there. It got attention. It did what it did. We wanted it to do, which was drive awareness and drive traffic to our booth. Talked about this briefly, putting people at the front and center of any interaction and experience is imperative. At the end of the day, everyone is a human. They have a target on their head. You have a target on your head. Everyone's really at the end of the day working towards hopefully the same goal, but also success for themselves. So if that means my success depends on another person also being successful, how can I make them successful? Because then it's going to come back and help make me successful. So always think about that give and take and that alignment and how you can collaborate with as many people as possible. And then celebrate the small wins along the way. The small wins create the waves needed to scale, and is a huge part of gaining that executive alignment. If you're new to a team or new to taking on events, what are those like 30, 60, 90 quick wins that you can get out the door and start to prove value right away, and then continue proving that value as quickly and often as possible so that you are not, forgotten, you stay relevant. And I think that's like kind of one of my favorite ones. Always just like coming back and advocating for yourself and your team and the work that you're doing.